to approve placement under private competent instruction. It changes code to allow siblings or step siblings to open enroll together under good cause exemptions, and it removes the requirements that, so currently teacher librarians, you can be a librarian in elementary, you can be a librarian in secondary, but you can't be a K-12 librarian without a master's degree, and so it strikes that requirement from code. That's the overview of the bill. Senator Celsi, do you have any opening comments, or would you rather go to comments from the crowd?
Sorry to interrupt. The Zoom is, our room is apparently muted. Ryan texted me. Are we good now?
We're good now?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, I would like to make a comment. I just want to go through the lobbyist declarations for this, to make this, let everyone know in this room who's here. The Rural School Associates of Iowa, Advocates of Iowa are against this bill. The Urban Education Network of Iowa is against this bill. For this bill, the Iowa Association of Christian Schools, which would benefit from this bill. The Iowa Catholic Conference, which would benefit from this bill. Iowans for Tax Relief, it's really funny that they're on this list at all because vouchers cost more for taxpayers. The Iowa Library Association is against this bill, and if I learn one thing in my education, and that is don't be on the other side of a librarian. She'll beat you every time. She knows where the info is. Okay, League of Women Voters against. Interestingly, the Department of Education for. Very, very strange. Professional Educators of Iowa undecided, also very strange. Everyone who advocates for students in our state is against this bill. The people who are on the side of this bill passing are the ones who will directly benefit from it financially. Just wanted to say that before we get going.
Senator Rozenboom, do you have any opening comments?
Very briefly, I just want to thank Governor Reynolds for presenting this bill. I think it's a wonderful bill, and I look forward to the discussion from the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. At this time, we will go to public comment, and so I'm going to move the microphone down to the end of the table. Again, if you wish to speak to this bill, I encourage you to do so. We need to move quickly, so if you're interested in speaking, be prepared to follow the next person in line. Oh, thank you. Please, before you do this, as with our earlier subcommittee, if you were in here, announce who you are. This is a large crowd. We want everybody to know who's speaking. Announce who you are and your position on the bill, and then speak, and please keep comments brief. Thank you.
I'm Jake Highfill. I represent Ed Choice. We support all choice in education. We believe in funding students and not systems. We believe in charters, public school. We want to thank the governor, thank the Senate, and thank the House for working on this bill. It's a great bill, and we're moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jake.
Chuck Hurley, the family leader, we're supportive. The reason we Iowa taxpayers fund education in the first place is for children. It's not for buildings. It's not even primarily for school personnel. It's for the kids. For many Iowa families, their kids are trapped by their zip code or their income bracket in a school that is not the best for their particular child. These scholarships would give parents the ability to choose a learning environment where their kids can better thrive rather than confine them to a place where they are falling behind. Yet some would deny parents that choice and restrict tax dollars to government schools alone. That is hypocritical. We don't enforce that restriction on others. For example, we already permit many Iowans to choose what's best for their situation with their own tax dollars. Medicaid recipients aren't forced to go to a government hospital or go to a government doctor. They can choose a private, even a religious medical facility like Mercy Hospital, Iowa Methodist, and so on. And Iowa already spends $50 million every year for the Iowa tuition grant. So students can go to the college of their choice, including private religious schools. The good news is that giving parents more opportunities to choose what's best for their kids is both good for the kids and for public schools. A 2020 analysis by Neil McCluskey of Washington, D.C. Cato Institute found 24 out of 26 empirical studies affirm school choice programs have a positive, statistically significant effect on public school outcomes. Another study by New York's Manhattan Institute found that the Florida's school choice program was of particular benefit to students with disabilities who experienced less bullying and improved academic performance in the public schools when parents had parental choice in education. To wrap up, let's remember why we fund education in the first place and do what's best for Iowa's kids. They need to come first. Let's not forget the good news. Giving parents more choice through these scholarships will be best both for the children and for existing public schools. Thank you.
Anna Wolvers, former special education teacher with 14 years background, now homeschool teacher in Marshalltown and tutor. I am for ESAs, but as a personal private tutor, I need more direction as a teacher, how I can help these families that choose that. And it doesn't look to be now, as it's stated, that that would actually work for us. So I think it's a good start, but I think the entire money should follow the kid, and it should be open to anyone who wants that in the state of Iowa, not just the 10,000 cap and based on income. Thank you.
Emily Piper, representing the Iowa Association of School Boards. We are registered opposed, which Senator Celsi didn't actually mention. I was like, wait a minute, we're registered opposed.
Sorry, I ran out of time.
That's okay. I do want to talk about 3 divisions that are of concern to us. Division 1, which is talking about transparency. We're not opposed to that division. I just want everyone to know that. We have some workability issues that I have a commitment that we can try to find a way to make that work well for the schools to achieve the goals the governor outlined with respect to transparency. I would just note that much of what we already do provides this opportunity. We need to do a better job of how we communicate that to parents, and that's sort of our goal in looking at that. So we are not opposed. We fully support codifying some transparency measures. I just want to make that clear. We are, of course, opposed to vouchers, and that is not a surprise. We believe public dollars should follow. Public taxpayer dollars should be for our public schools. One of the biggest concerns we have about this latest iteration of vouchers, because we've been debating this for quite a while, is number one, there's some very explicit undue burden created on the private schools who accept these students that have the vouchers. That's concerning because we've seen this is taxpayer dollars. And if we're going to have to go through and be transparent and provide all of this, we feel like that should also be a requirement of the private schools. And number 2, and this comes from a standpoint of our long battle has been to reduce inequities in school funding on a per pupil basis for public schools. And by transferring approximately $220,000, assuming that all of the vouchers were utilized, to 102 school districts, actually creates a new inequity rather than trying to reduce them. Division 3, and this is the social studies standard. We don't have a problem with reviewing what our social studies standards are and making sure that those are rigorous and meet the 21st century needs. We do have a problem when we start to put standards in the code, flexibility to make changes. We would prefer to see that be a process where we use the DE task or working group process that they've used for past standards to come up with what do we need to include. The graduation requirement by having a 70% score on the civics exam gives me pause, just because I would hate to see kids that are very talented who don't do well on standardized tests being told they could not graduate even though they've met all the other requirements. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Marissa Matson. I'm a junior at Des Moines Christian School, where I've attended since kindergarten, and I'd like to focus on the scholarship portion of this bill. So today I'd like to talk to you about how my private education has benefited me and how it'd be amazing to give others that same opportunity. My parents wanted me to attend a Christian school for not only the faith, several other reasons, like being taught reading by phonics and having great leadership opportunities. At my school, teachers care not only about my academic development, but also the personal and spiritual lives of their students. And that has been something truly beneficial for me the past 12 years. Also, attending a school with kindergarten through 12th grades in one building, like mine and other private schools, creates a family-like environment and allows us to have opportunities to work with those younger students and set a good example for them. this, I truly feel like DMC is one big family, and being a smaller school, we have that unique sense of community. My
I was
Christian school
watching the
education
hearing.
has also helped prepare
There's
me
a
for college,
study bill on
figure
vouchers,
out what
on
I'm
school
good at
vouchers,
and what
and
careers
I was
might fit.
watching the hearing.
Kids are individuals with unique learning needs that specialized schools can accommodate. Some students may benefit from single-sex schools or smaller environments, and allowing parents that opportunity and choice to spend some of their tax dollars towards private education would open valuable learning opportunities for those students. I personally know several people that would like a Christian education but cannot afford to pay tuition. And I hope you'll support this bill and give every student the chance to maximize their learning. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlotte James, and I'm a junior at Dowling Catholic. Today, I will be speaking in favor of the Students First Scholarship Program. My parents have blessed my two sisters and I with the opportunity to attend Catholic school all our lives. My parents have made several sacrifices in order to make it possible to put our education first. I attended St. Francis of Assisi School from pre-K and graduated from there in 2019. I will say that the important choice of where my sisters and I would attend school was the most impactful on my life. Dowling Catholic has changed my life in the best possible ways. I've learned leadership skills, the ability to work with adults. I've learned how to academically push myself, and when I need a helping hand, to ask for some assistance. I've been able to speak on my beliefs and opinions, as well as learn more about them. I'm an extremely involved student at Dowling, as well as in my community. When I speak to my friends outside of school, they often wish for the opportunities that I've been blessed with. Not all families in Iowa are able to make the choice of where their students will attend school. By offering scholarships to students, there's more of an opportunity for those who want to push themselves and succeed. We will also be able to make our private schools more diverse and unify our community by making school choice an option for more families. As a student at Dowling Catholic, I would love to be able to give them the same choice to those in my community who want to give their children a better opportunity for their futures. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Krista Castellano, and I currently attend Dowling Catholic as a senior this year. I fully support this bill of scholarships for Catholic education. I believe that we should push for Catholic education as it has helped students like me achieve great education and have the ability to worship and learn about my faith freely in school. Catholic education has not only provided me with advanced learning opportunities, it has influenced my character today. Being able to pray openly has deepened my relationship with Christ and created me into a kind young woman that strives to serve this community. At my school, Dowling not only urges students to give back to the community through a 4-year project called Service Hours that requires all students to obtain a minimum of 10 service hours in the community per semester, it has taught me great responsibility needed for young leaders centered on Christ. Continually, we wear uniforms that signifies unity within the school, but also represents the responsibility of every individual student. Dowling is one of the many Catholic schools that sets an example of the responsibility and charity that our students strive for within the community. Likewise, I've had a very similar experience at my Catholic middle school and elementary school. Catholic education has opened many opportunities for all students that attend, which pushes each of them for greatness. It can be shown in our hallways, teachers, and classmates. I've always found a home within the Catholic school system. It is very encouraging and safe feeling that demonstrates care for one another. Catholic schools truly look after their students and raises leaders on Christ. I would not be the same person without Catholic education. This is why I fully support the bill of scholarships for religious education and believe more students should have the opportunity to attend Catholic schools. Thank you for your time and consideration.
My name is Rochelle Skibout, and I'm from Pella, and I'm very thankful for Governor Reynolds putting this bill forward too. And I would like to see it expanded a little bit to include current homeschoolers. And my reason behind that is I do think that the tax dollars should follow the student. And I'm blessed to be able to homeschool my 6 kids. My oldest has some pretty severe learning disabilities, and that's actually why we chose to homeschool, is because I have a background in special education, and I enrolled her in the public school and she was going to get 15 minutes of services a day, and that wasn't enough for her. And so I've been able to do most of her stuff at home, but we've had to outsource therapies, and that's really hard to do on one income when you're also buying all your homeschool materials. And we've tried using the services at the public school, and the services at the public school in some ways are fantastic, but they don't work well with a homeschool schedule, because if I have a child that needs to be there at 10:15. And then I have a child that needs to be there at 12:15 and a child that needs to be there at 2 o'clock. I can't get my school done with my other kids running them back and forth to school 3 times a day. And if the money actually followed the kids, it would equip parents who maybe not, and I'm not saying homeschooling is for everybody, but those parents who are equipped to homeschool their kids, it would actually enable them to do that and get the services they need for their kids. And so I would love to see it expanded a little bit. I certainly appreciate looking into it, and I appreciate Governor Reynolds putting it on the table. And thank you for your time.
So quiet, my God. I know senators who aren't that quiet. Maybe all of them.
Oh, goodness. Hello, everybody. My name is Brittany Lumley. I'm here on behalf of Iowa Advocates for Choice in Education, and we are registered in support of this bill. We are an organization that focuses and supports all areas of education, whether it's in a public setting, non-public, online, homeschool, what have you, we support it. But our emphasis is on choice. And for that reason, we're really in support of the scholarship piece of this bill. You heard from some students. They said it, I don't want to echo what they said, but they said it best. And I really appreciate you, senators, for bringing this bill forward and all of your continued work throughout the last couple of years. We want to thank the governor for her leadership on this issue. I have the executive director from Iowa ACE. She's joined via Zoom, so I'll cede my comments to her if we get to her. But again, we're very much in support of this bill, and we thank you for your time. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pam Moldy from Pella, Iowa, and I'm a homeschool mom. Signer of the Declaration of Independence, Dr. Benjamin Rush was one of the first of our founding fathers to call for free national public schools. He taught that the purpose of public schools was to teach students to love and serve God, their country, and their families. This bill has the opportunity to put school choice back in the hands of Iowa parents, to foster competition, to improve our schools, and help return control to the local level. This is good news for low-income families I know who can't afford to send their children to the Christian school, yet they aren't comfortable sending their teenage son, for example, to a public school where he must share the main boys' locker room with a girl who self-identifies as a boy. Yes, this is the case in Pella, Iowa. Please consider expanding the coverage of this bill to include CPI homeschool students like my 4 children here today. Homeschoolers make up approximately 8% of students, but many are in a lower tax bracket because, like my family, we have to survive on one income. We struggle each month to pay the bills. STOs don't help us. Plus, we need a solution that provides funds to help pay for homeschool classes that aren't necessarily accredited, such as the ones we take at our high school co-op in Pella. These are quality classes, but they cost us thousands each year. We homeschool because we see beyond the years as our founders did. Our kids can quote the Declaration and they can tell you the 5 rights in the First Amendment. They have love of God, love of country, and love of family, just as Benjamin Rush envisioned. Children taught this way grow up to be good citizens, and that's good for government. So I urge you to move this bill forward, and adding in homeschoolers is a great start. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Melissa Peterson with the Iowa State Education Association, and we are registered in opposition to this bill. I'm going to talk about a handful of the divisions, and I'll try to do so as briefly as possible. The first division related to transparency. We do have some questions about that and would like to work with you to clarify some things, as my colleague from the School Board Association mentioned. We are in favor of transparency. We actually just got done having a good subcommittee related to the Parental Bill of Rights in terms of, I think, helping to highlight and educate Iowans about what they already have access to from their locally elected school boards and the school districts that serve more than 484,000 public school students across the entire state. I just want to make sure that that transparency is not hindered by impracticality when it comes to posting all of our support materials, curriculum, those kinds of things. Much of that is already available. But what happens if there is a current event that pops up that might need discussion, whether we're talking about, God forbid, another 9/11 or World Trade, something along those lines that needs to be dealt with. We wouldn't want someone to be penalized or gotten in trouble because they do follow up and Conversation with a student, for example, things that might just come up in natural discussion in your classroom setting. We don't want that to be a high stakes situation as long as it's obviously done within the parameters of the school district in terms of posting materials. We also appreciate what you've included related to intellectual freedom. Might want to work on property right issues. We have a lot of wonderful public education professionals that are responsible for producing materials that then can be used in other districts. We just wouldn't want to violate anybody's intellectual property rights on that front. Related to the second division, this is where we start to have significant concerns, and a lot of it has to do with just a couple of things that I'd like to frankly clarify for the record. No one is being forced to go to a public school. There are lots of different options for choice here in the state of Iowa, whether we look at the wonderful public schools we have available to us, the public charter schools we have available to us, Montessori schools within our public school system, the expansion of open enrollment that this legislative body has taken up a couple of years, well, within the last couple of years. And we have quality private schools, as well as some competent independent instruction or homeschool opportunities within this state. We actually have lots and lots of choice. We actually also, as a state, currently subsidize private education to the tune of over $60 million, because we want to make sure that whether a student is going to a public school or a private school, that they do have access to services, particularly if it, for example, comes from an area education agency to provide for special education opportunities for our kids, whether they're at our public schools or our private schools. Transportation services is another element that we help to subsidize for private schools, because we want to make sure that kids, whether they're going to public school or private school, get there safely. There are lots of things this state does to support choice. What we ask this state not to do is to create a standing unlimited appropriation to the tune of approximately $75 million to benefit a cap of 10,000 students, when that $75 million could be used across our entire state to benefit 484,000 students, all of whom could benefit from those additional resources, particularly given the challenging circumstances that we find ourselves in. And so at a time when we are having conversations about the finite resources available to the state, and we do have to make these important decisions, we would ask that if you have the option of spending $75 million to benefit 10,000 or $75 million to benefit 484,000, that's where your money ought to go. If you do not appreciate that argument, I would also suggest, and it might be a little politically incorrect, but it's an old adage that works for me in this situation. If you are going to accept the king's coin, you should follow the king's rule. That doesn't happen in this bill. And in fact, I'll say it a little firmly than perhaps my colleague from the School Board Association did. I have challenges with applying different accountability or more intensified accountability and transparency standards to our already well-performing public school districts in a piece of legislation where we are simultaneously alleviating the minimal accountability and transparency requirements for private schools. If you are going to accept taxpayer dollars to fund your educational opportunity, you ought to have to adhere to rules where people can then follow up on their taxpayer dollars and know what's happening with them. We know in current private schools, they have different employment requirements than do our public schools. We know that they have different admissions requirements than our public schools. Public schools take anyone and everyone and do our best job to provide them a quality education, regardless of the income level or their zip code. It is very equitable in that fashion. The same thing does not have to happen in a private school setting. And I would argue I would just reiterate, have an awful lot of choice already in this state. I'll move on to the next division, social studies. There are two things I'd actually like to mention. One, we do not like the high stakes nature. I will say we already actually have a lot of the civics tests being given in our social studies classes, so it's not the test itself that makes me nervous. We don't like the graduation requirement. I will also say I do not think it should be permissive to have an accommodation for an IEP. I think that might be a violation, and we need to make that if you're going to move in this direction, it's not a shall provide, it ought be a may provide, it ought be a shall provide an accommodation for a student with an IEP. I think the only other thing that I would mention at this time, I do have a question for my colleagues at the AEA, is I thought related to the prior approval for placement for IEP students, I thought there was an appeals process now. We would want to make sure that whether it's private or public school students, they still have an opportunity for that AEA consult. If they don't like the determination of the AEA, can they appeal? Sometimes parents don't know what they don't know in terms of perhaps the severity of the challenges of their child. And then the only other thing I will mention, and I appreciate your time, is we don't want to start down a slippery slope where we start reducing standards for different types of licensure. And so I would really ask us to approach that librarian element with caution. We know we have lots of quality teacher librarians who do not have master's degrees. There's a reason why that requirement was put in place for people who serve an entire school district system, K through 12, as opposed to just the K through 6 and the 7 through 12 component. Thank you.
And before we have another person come up, I would, go ahead. We do have a representative from the governor's office here, and I would like to give Molly an opportunity just to share some of the thoughts and motivations behind the bill. You've heard from pros and cons. You come on up and weigh in and share some information. Sorry for butting in line, folks.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you to members of the subcommittee. Pleased to speak today on the governor's school choice bill. A strong public education system is vital to Iowa's success, which is why the public education is the single largest line item of the state of Iowa's balance sheet, accounting for more than 56% of the entire state budget. For most Iowa families, as you've heard from many of them today, this money is well spent. Across the state, in every one of our 99 counties, there are strong schools with dedicated teachers who provide more than just textbook instruction. They give emotional support and structure. They help guide our children through their most difficult and formative years. But for some families, their school district does not fit their values or meet the needs of their child. Parents matter, and when it comes to their children's education, it matters that they have information, options, and the respect that they deserve. Last legislative session, the governor introduced a sweeping education bill aimed at expanding options for Iowa's families, and nearly every one of those proposals were signed into law. But there is still more work to be done. This bill helps to ensure that every child is successful in school. It provides options, and it ensures transparency and engages families in the educational experience. Every school, public or private, should strive to be the best option it can be. When they succeed, Iowa becomes an education destination of choice for families everywhere. Happy to answer any questions that you may have on the bill. Thank you again to the subcommittee members. We hope you will pass this bill out of subcommittee today. Thank you.
Sorry for the interruption. Up next. Thanks, Margaret.
Margaret Buckton with the Urban Education Network. We're registered opposed to the bill. I just want to go through a couple of things, and it would echo what you've already heard from the public school lobby. Transparency is an obligation of receiving taxpayer dollars. So we have no complaints with a process to become more transparent if that's what's required. The workability of that is really difficult. And I'll just give you one example. It requires that all of the curriculum, the standards, the materials be posted in a way that it's sortable by the school, the grade, the class, and the teacher. And we don't have systems like that. So every school is going to have to work with a software developer to create that. It also requires that to be updated twice a year. My UEN curriculum directors met yesterday and talked about what an awe-inspiring task that would be to get down to the standard. And it's not so easy as saying one class, one teacher teaches a grade level standard, because we have students in public school that may be a grade level behind, maybe a grade level ahead, maybe special ed, maybe talented and gifted. So you might have different standards, different materials, multiple grade levels within one classroom, and then that could change the next classroom. So it would be really difficult. But I think the takeaway from that conversation is, once something is posted and it's very specific, do our teachers feel hamstrung and unable to meet the individual needs of students that arise in the course of the educational system within our public schools? And how do we make that workable while it's satisfying that requirement to be transparent? Second, the last thing about that is that the penalty of withholding state foundation aid for any day that you're in non-compliance, when non-compliance could be as simple as somebody forgetting to post a particular piece of materials. It could be an unintentional conversation that comes up and, oh, here's something that you could read about that. And all of a sudden a district finds himself in non-compliance. And we're really concerned when it kicks over to that new standard that was put in accreditation last year. About the education savings account, our concern, we do, as Melissa said, we have so much school choice in Iowa. We have, I think, the most expansive open enrollment law in the state. In many other states, it's based on being in a non-performing school or a school of high poverty. It may be regulated by racial makeup. Because we already have that. When you look at studies that make a difference for students, it's not necessarily applicable to Iowa because we have so much choice right now. Every school has to serve their children well. well, or they can choose to go to a neighboring school or an online school or a great private school with the supports we have as one of only 5 states that has both the tuition organization tax credits and the tuition textbook kind of tax credit. So when we think about those options available, we can't just extrapolate what happens in other states. We have pretty good education here in Iowa, and we're striving to get better all the time. But what we don't have is unlimited resources. So when we're in a situation of deciding the priorities of the state, and we can't even come up to an inflation rate on an increase on the per student amount for our public schools, to open the door to something that if it expands could be upwards to $500 million if we costed out things like adding homeschool and providing that that's education savings account for everybody in private school, it really makes it difficult for us to serve those that are in our urban schools in particular, who are more likely to be low income, more likely to speak a foreign language, more likely to have disabilities, and less likely to have the supports they need at home to be successful. So we appreciate the conversation and look forward to perfecting the systematic things that we need to as this bill moves forward.
Thank you, Chair Sinclair, Senator Rozenboom, and Senator Celsi for allowing me to share remarks on SSB 3080, and thank you to Governor Reynolds. My name is Denise Bubeck. I'm with the Family Leader Foundation and the Church Ambassador Network. The Family Leader Foundation supports SSB 3080. The Family Leader Foundation Church Ambassador Network has been teaming up with urban Christian schools in Iowa City, Waterloo, and Des Moines. Our goal is to equip the church to be a part of the solution for education in our communities. These urban Christian schools are one part of that strategy. It is the Church Ambassador Network's desire to see this model of education replicated throughout our state. Students First Scholarship will allow these urban Christian schools to continue what they believe, that all children are created and endowed by God with extraordinary potential to become outstanding kingdom citizens with families and churches of the urban core of Iowa to provide excellent education, affordable and Christian education. It is their belief that economically disadvantaged children can perform at the highest level, and they set high expectations for students and families. With God's help, students will become family and community leaders, working for justice, economic opportunity, and racial harmony, unifying the body of Christ in our cities and throughout the world. I have a couple statements today that I can provide to you from Joshua Christian Academy. They support the SSB 3080, and also there is Royal Christian Academy Administrator Chastity Martin. She provided statement for you too, and she's in support of SSB 3080. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak today.
Hi, I'm Andy Gilbert. I'm a parent to 3 children that use public, private, and homeschool education. Although this bill is a great start in giving some parents more choice, it's a Band-Aid solution covering the real problems. We used to be able to send all of our kids to public school with our values intact. They should love each other, love this country, and love their God, and not worry that those values would be compromised by ideological education in public schools. In the past 2 years, we've experienced a shift to want to lower standards, create division amongst our kids, to be ashamed of their country, and openly criticizes their faith. Much of the legislation coming through concerning curriculum are all small fixes to the root of the problem, which is Common Core and the need for education savings accounts for all taxpayers to improve education in Iowa. We moved here from one of the first states to abandon Common Core. Our kids were in standard classes previously, but after moving here, they were placed in advanced courses and skipped a couple of grades in some areas. Common Core ties educators' hands in what they teach and how to meet the educational needs of their students. By allowing ESAs with no strings attached to all taxpayers can create more charter and private schools that in turn will benefit public school teachers with more manageable class sizes. This could open more opportunities for children with IEPs since many are limited to only public school. Please consider expanding this bill to be more inclusive to all students in Iowa. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Nicole Hassel, and I'm a mom from Johnston, Iowa. And just a few just my background. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. My family was poor. My mom struggled with drug addiction, and my dad was not around. My brother chose to go in the corner and sell drugs, and I chose to go to the library and study. In high school, I was ranked number 3 out of 384 kids. If my parents had the opportunity to send me to a private school and not have to worry about paying for it, how much more I could have been able to accomplish. So now I focus on making sure that my children have every opportunity that I was not afforded as I went through high school and grammar school on the south side of Chicago, the inner city, in the city, not the suburbs, but the actual inner city of Chicago, where there's violent crime, where there's poverty, where it is, they tell you, and they put you in this cycle of dependency on the government, as well as a dependency on what you can spend your money on and what you can't spend your money on. That's called socialism. I escaped it.
Would you mind staying on the bill, please?
Oh, absolutely. And I am in support of this bill. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And you talk about transparency. So my son is a senior, and I spent 20 minutes trying to find an overview of some of his classes that he was taking. So I would know as a parent what is being taught. We talked about, you said transparency, and you said that it is illegal to teach critical race theory in the state of Iowa, but yet and still, we're coming across equity, we're coming across our kids being looked at as victims and oppressors. We are not victims, we are not oppressors. You need to look at our kids as equal. You need to look at our kids based on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. When you continue to lower the standard in our school system, you are telling us that we are not capable of learning and rising to the occasion. Parents should have the opportunity to choose where their kids are going to go to school. Parents should have the opportunity. And you know what? My tax dollars should follow my child wherever I decide to send them to school, whether it is homeschooling, whether it is private school, whether it's a charter school, whether it is public school. We should have options as parents. We gave birth to those kids. They are our kids, and this is the start. And there's still work to be done. Thank you.
Mark Brown, father and 4, 2 still in the system, a spouse still in the public school system as well. I just want to address some of the facts that my Senator Celsi said, that anybody as an advocate for students would be against this bill. I wholeheartedly disagree with that statement, and I'm rather taken aback by that statement by the senator. In relation to the bill itself, I noticed that there's a section for review of materials that parents may find objectionable, either in the public library or in the curriculum itself. Review process is stated, but it does not go far enough. I've noticed that in the school systems we have, a lot of times the reviews are done by minors themselves. So if you have graphical material, I don't know why you would have minors in the review process of those graphical or questionable materials. That should be reserved for the parents and the school board officials themselves. And I wish that would be amended and put into the bill. Thank you.
We have about 6 minutes left, so mindful of time.
All right. Hi, I'm BJ Hoffman. I'm a Liscum, Iowa resident in Hardin County. I'm in support of this bill. I'm in support of this because this is about parents' choice. Whether it's your choice that you want your children to have a biblical worldview education, whether you want your child to not have to experience somebody masturbating next to them in a classroom, whether you want your child to go to a school where you believe obscene materials are being distributed, this is about choice. This is so much about choice. Senator Celsi, you made a great point. My mom's a librarian And she helped my family put my son through Des Moines Christian for 8 years. She's in her 47th year of teaching. If she didn't believe in the public school system, why would she support my choice, my wife's choice to send my son to Des Moines Christian School? You're right. I don't win many arguments with her, but this is something, when you have a public educator willing to sacrifice to help send their grandson for a biblical worldview, it makes all the difference in the world. Thank you.
Hi, Dave Doughton, representing Rural School Advocates of Iowa. Please don't take my brevity as not having passion for this, because I've talked to about 150 superintendents during the day today, and they all have strong feelings about this, but I need to be short on time. So we have some concerns about transparency. The way the bill is written is pretty prescriptive, and my colleagues have talked about some of the issues that would come up for some of the smaller schools being able to do that. I'm not going to address the other divisions, although I could, but Division 2 is where I want to spend my time. We as rural schools certainly recognize and appreciate a parent's choice to send their child to another school district, a different type of school, homeschool, whatever it happens to be. However, we don't believe that public funds should follow, should go to private sources. We think that over 90% of the kids are educated in the public schools, and we're fearful, I guess I would use that word, that this will become an incentive for parents to pull their kids out of schools and use the money for education of their kids in another way. So we just are not in favor of public funds going to private schools. We do want to say that we appreciate the governor's consideration of the small schools. So having some of the funds go there. However, when I've talked to those small schools, they say, I'm not sure I want to take money from other public schools. So we would like to see that funding stream just be direct, and recognizing that small schools have some unique needs. Again, we're opposed to the bill overall, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
I'm gonna pause. Let me come down to the microphone. I'm going to pause just for a moment. For those of you online, that we still have a lineup in the room, so we're not going to get to online comments. So what I would encourage you to do is please email me, and I can distribute your comments. Jillian, can we have those sent to you? The email address to send those to is Jillian, JILLIAN.Carlson, CARLSON @legis, LEGIS.Iowa, IOWA.gov, GOV. Jillian.Carlson @legis.iowa.gov. Thank you.
There's also a way to comment on the bill online.
There's a link, you can comment right on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Carl Schilling, and I guess I'm speaking as a parent whose children have grown up in the public schools and was a public school person myself. I'm old enough to remember when Iowa was #1 in education. My father was a self-employed carpenter, and there was no work in the winter. So in the winters, I would go to school someplace warm, Texas, California, Florida. It was like being sick for 3 months because the schools there just weren't up to snuff. They weren't as good as Iowa. We're not #1 anymore. Depending on who you look at, it's number 17, number 27. We just aren't there. This bill, I believe, is going to make it worse because it siphons money away from public schools that we need to build them back up and be what they should be. I have a quote you may or may not like, but it's I believe it was Robert Hutchins, who was the president of Chicago University, said the purpose of education is to make young people as different from their parents as possible. I rather like that idea. It means you should widen their horizons. They should know more than what you teach them. If they only learn my values, heck, I could do that. I want them to learn other things. The best place, I think, is a public school where it's diverse. Mark Twain said that man is the only animal that has the one true religion, several of them. And I think in the public school that plays out where you may have lunch with a Muslim or a Jew.
Carl, I'm sorry to interrupt. We are at 10 till, so
Okay.
wrap up your comments because we do still
Okay.
have 3 or 4 people back here who would like to speak and the senators need to speak as well.
Okay, I'm getting worried. I'd just like to say that if people want a choice of a private school, more power to them, but their churches need to fund them, not the taxpayer. Thank you.
Carl. Come on up.
Craig Patterson, representing the Iowa Library Association. I just wanted to speak really quickly and say that we're opposed to the Division 6 of this bill. We would ask that, humbly ask that you look at removing it. We do have like probably 24 teacher librarians on the Zoom, but we won't get to them. But thank you.
Thanks so much.
Good evening, Drew Klein with Americans for Prosperity. I'll be brief as well. We appreciate this bill from the governor's office and the opportunity to speak in favor of it. I think that the problem is we're missing the reality in education, and that is that students are individuals. They're not part of some collective. They're not part of a number on a spreadsheet that some educrat here in Des Moines is going to dictate what's best for a collective. They're individuals, and every single one of them is capable of greatness so long as we have the opportunity to meet the unique needs, aptitudes, and values of those students. But our funding system today doesn't really allow for that. It allows for some of that for those who have the privilege and the ability, the bank account to fund those choices and to find their way to the needs, to the services, to the education setting that does allow for that. But if we want to maximize the opportunity of every student in the state of Iowa, well, we have to have a funding system that aligns with that uniqueness, with those unique interests, aptitudes, with their skill set. And we know that's true because we have the data from other states that are doing it. And so I don't see this as an us versus them type of argument. Again, anybody who wants to continue to choose public education is going to have that available to them. There is not a public school system in the country that has closed because of a school choice program. Those options will be on the table. But for everybody else, for the ones that are trapped by their zip code and their family's income, we deserve to have more opportunity for those. We owe those families more opportunity. We hope that you'll continue to move this forward, and we look forward to this opportunity being available to every Iowan as we continue this debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have further speakers? Good to know because we're over time. Senator Celsi, you have a couple minutes for some closing comments here before we wrap up the meeting. Oh yeah, we do need the. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks everyone for being here today, and thanks to all those who waited online to listen. In case anyone's wondering, I downloaded all the comments from online. Not surprisingly, 93% of them were against this bill, which is about the same percentage of Iowans who attend public schools, which is the vast majority of Iowans. So there's a few things I want to talk about. Oh, here's a note that I got telling me to vote no on this bill right before I came down. So choice. I'm a product of Catholic education. K through 12 went to Dowling. I was on their board of education. I know how incredibly close to the margin private schools come every year to pay for their school system. Starting a whole new school system is expensive. That's why it's my charge as a public official and of the people who work in this building to take care of public schools, because that is our job. It's not our job to create a whole new system and then fund that too. It's just going to get bigger and bigger. Then the transparency concerns I think are huge. One of the things that bothers me the most is that this bill would allow the Department of Education to hire a whole slew of private contractors to administer this plan. And who knows where they're going to come from and who knows how much that's going to cost. The reason why I say that is because we don't know how much it's going to cost. A standing unlimited appropriation is what's necessary for that type of boondoggle, and that's what we've got. That's what's going to happen. They're going to hire a whole bunch of out-of-state companies who just want to get their hands on our public treasure, and that they're going to take it. There's no transparency whatsoever there. Then somebody talked about Florida's great success. Florida's had over $1 billion in voucher fraud since they started their program, $1 billion. And every state so far that has had a public private voucher program like this has had massive fraud because the program is not administered well. They hire a bunch of private contractors who just want to make money. And then guess what? They make money and the public gets screwed. That's what happens. So that's my comment. This is a bad bill from A to Z. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Celsi. Senator Rozenboom.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's not a new issue. I regret we don't have a little more time, but I was on a subcommittee, I think in 2018, when we considered educational savings account. And I made a lot of notes then, and I still have those notes and I reviewed them today. I'm not going to touch on all of them. Some of you have already talked about them. One though, there's a few points I want to make. First of all, Iowans value school choice, as demonstrated by what nearly 40,000 private school students and countless and many more homeschool advocates or families. And a lot of Iowans believe our school choice options are very, very limited as opposed to what some have said today. I would argue that our choices are far too limited. Parents and families who desire school choice cut across all social and economic lines. This isn't a rich versus poor question. All Iowans that are financially capable down to those that really struggle desire school choice. This point was made, I want to reinforce it. Very few government programs that provide money back to the people require that those dollars be spent in a specific government institution. If you receive money for food assistance, they don't tell you which grocery store you have to go to. If you get money for medical assistance, they don't tell you which doctor to see or which hospital to go to. I think a lot of the same things apply here, and I think we should be asked why we are forced to access education dollars only through a public school. The argument that public dollars should not support children in private schools is a red herring. We have supported, by way of Iowa tuition grants, our private colleges and students in our private colleges with public funds for over 50 years. I have yet to have one person come to me and protest our use of public dollars to go to Central College or William Penn or Grinnell College or any of other small colleges. I think this is an important thing to remember. Iron sharpens iron. That concept is taught in the Bible, but it's borne out in life experiences in many ways. Competition is a good thing in virtually any environment, and that is also true, I believe, in education. Okay, we'll wrap this up. I said I had these notes from 2018. I think about how much has changed since 2018 when I sat through an education subcommittee on this same issue. Number one, this bill is a lot less aggressive in terms of its scope than that bill was. And this bill has no impact to the taxpayer. It's neutral to the taxpayer. It doesn't cost the taxpayer additional money. It does support our rural schools over and above what they're getting now. The other thing that's changed, and no one in this room can argue with this, I don't believe. After the pandemic, when we saw the now 2-year battle over a number of mandates, a number of ways to approach teaching our kids, and parents across the country were exposed in a more day-to-day basis what's going on in classrooms, there was an uproar. And that uproar continues today. And if you just check out the results of the Virginia gubernatorial race if you want to find out how that plays out. So I strongly support this bill. I will sign the subcommittee report with my best John Hancock impersonation and move it on. I think this is a matter of fairness, a question of fairness for all students, all parents in the Iowa. So Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I couldn't say it better than Senator Rozenboom has. What I want to do is conclude with just a recent experience I had in with some colleagues of mine and some folks who are. I was at dinner with a group of folks. Senator Rozenboom was there, half a dozen other people. There were public educators. There were private educators. There were coaches and administrators and school board members and me. And we were talking about all kinds of issues related to Iowa's community colleges, to our public school systems. We were having a conversation about education. And when we got to the conversation about choice in education, about parental rights and choice in education, which is what this bill gets to at the heart of. The transparency is a parental rights issue. The choice in education, the scholarship is a parental rights issue. The access to information, all of this bill is a parental rights issue, and it's a choice in education issue. And so when we got to this topic, when we got to the discussion of the governor's bill, I looked around the table, and every single person at that table, with the exception of one, had either sent their children to private school, or had homeschooled their children at some point or another, or had sent their children to private college. Every single person at that table had access school choice. Every single person at that table had access to school choice. Do you know what's different about the people at that table and the people addressed by this bill? You want to know what the difference is? We had the means to choose. We had the means to choose. We were capable of paying that tuition or capable of teaching our children at home. We had the means to choose. Do you know who is not open to school choice, who's not allowed to choose their education? It's parents who don't have the means to choose. And this bill addresses those parents. This bill addresses those parents. We're addressing students who are poor, in poverty. I'll conclude with this. I want to choose what's best for my son, my 15-year-old son. Do you know what I choose? And what I'll continue to choose regardless of this bill? I will choose my son's public school. I love my son's public school. They take care of his needs. They advance him as he needs to. They hold him accountable when he needs it. That's not true for all students in all schools. What we've got to come down to in this bill, what we've got to address is those kids whose mom can't choose. Those kids. Stop talking about systems. Stop talking about teachers in a public school system. There are teachers in private schools. Stop talking about people who don't support this as people who don't matter. There are parents in this room who support this. And they support this because they know they have the right to choose what is best for their child, but they might not have the means to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill is not about those of us who can already choose for our kids. This bill is about kids who don't have any other opportunity. And I beg you to think of those children as Senator Rozenboom and I sign this out. I assume Senator Celsi will not be joining us. Thank you all for joining us. And I hope that those of you who are still online would be willing to submit your comments to us so that we can review those as well.